Welcome back to part 4 of this Build in Public series where I'm building end-to-end a real-time translation app. Now in this part, I'm going to be bringing you up to speed on all the latest additions that I've made to the user experience. So let's get into it. Where we got up to last time was we were able to create pretty much all the backend functionality that we needed to actually get the bare bones of the application working. And on top of that, we created a very, very ugly looking user interface, something that looked like it was out of the 90s, to be honest. But it was functional, so that was the main thing. Now I've been doing a whole bunch of work on this, and I'm going to bring you right up to speed in terms of what the user experience looks like now. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a terminal, and I'm going to run the different servers that I need. So the first one that I need is the Django server. So let me just run this. Let's try this again. There we go. So this is my Django server. If I open up this URL here, put it into here, open up the admin panel. I'm going to come back to the admin panel later. Now let's run our Daphne server. So the Daphne server is our WebSocket server that's going to allow us to stream the speech from the web application to the backend in real time. So let's open up a new server, a new terminal. And let's run that command. So the Django server is running on port 8000 and the Daphne server is running on port 8001. And then we've got our React server as well, which is obviously going to serve our React app. Cool, and that is at this address here, so localhost port 5173, which is usually standard with a Vite app. So first thing that you'll notice is we have an authentication page, which is not necessarily what we had before as well. So very simple here really. Essentially it's just taking in a username and a password. And what you'll notice is that if I come into my Django folder here, I've got a whole bunch more apps within my Django project, including an authentication app. So because Django is kind of like a batteries included framework to use when you're building out a web application, it actually has a lot of the authentication functionality built in already. So things like the user models, the permissions, groups, and you can easily extend it with things like Django JSON Web Tokens as well. So this is using a JSON Web Token based authentication method. So if I sign in here, this will take me to my main page. Now the first thing that I want to do is I just want to show you the overall user experience and the user interface. This is obviously very different to what it looked like before. And I was also trying to think as I was designing this, how would I want this to look? Now the first thing that's worth mentioning is obviously the branding. So in the top left hand corner here, I have created quite a cute little sort of like sheep, and I've sort of colloquially named this solution Baba. Now the reason why is because growing up, when I couldn't speak Gujarati, everyone was calling my grandmother Ba, and we didn't really know what it meant. Later we found out that it essentially means mother. But families also use it to refer to grandmothers as well. So my main association with the Gujarati language is my Ba, my grandmother. And so I basically just sort of like combine that together into two sort of words, and actually it also sounds like a bit of a sheep as well, because sheep's Ba. So this is sort of like the working branding, as you will. So I wanted to kind of keep the user experience quite cute, quite friendly, very approachable, and very easily digestible. It needs to be really clear and concise. And that's why the Hero UI framework was actually really good to use for this. So on the left hand side here we have the recording controls. So here I can start a recording session, I can end a session, and I can clear a session. Underneath this is where we can select what language we want to use. So obviously by default it's set to Gujarati going in and English coming out, but in the future I can very easily add more languages in here as well, which is really nice. Just below here we have a section for speaker diarisation, which as we start speaking I'll demonstrate how this works. And there's a few other sort of like neat features that I've added here as well. So as the speakers are speaking, what will happen is that the user interface will follow the speaker that's actually speaking currently. So you won't have to keep on scrolling around the screen to see the latest speech from the person that's currently speaking. And some keyboard shortcuts as well, if people fancied that and they were using it on desktop. Obviously the channel of choice going forwards will be mobiles, but this was a bit of fun for now, just adding in extra features. And on the right, this is basically where the transcription will appear. I will show how this looks on mobile as well, because everything designed is mobile friendly too. But what you'll see is sort of like a side-by-side transcription You can see it in a stack view. You can see just the speech that's coming in, or you can see just the translation. So let's give this a go. And once again, I'm going to be testing this in my very basic Gujarati. So let's start recording. Mara naam Arun છે. તારું નામ અનિશ છે. મારું નામ અરુણ છે. Okay, cool. You can see how that worked, right? So we've got the Gujarati on the left-hand side. And by the way, the font for this Gujarati, because it's obviously a completely different script, it's obviously not using the Western alphabet. I've actually imported a special font just to display this text, which is really nice. So as the speech was coming in, as you saw, the Gujarati gets displayed on the left, the English gets displayed on the right. We can also stack it as well to put it on top of each other. We can just highlight the speech and we can just highlight the translation. Alright, now let's end this session and let's try it with 2 speakers. Okay, so once again, I'm relying on some motivational speeches that I found on YouTube in Gujarati, so hopefully this will work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the recording, I'm going to start speaking, and then I'm going to play this Gujarati recording from my phone over from a different angle, and it'll pick it up as 2 different speakers. So, મારું નામ અરુણ છે, તારું નામ અનિશ છે. મારું નામ અરુણ છે, તારું નામ અનિશ છે.
એ વિષયના ઉલ્લેખ માત્રથી આમ જોઈએ તો મનમાં થોડીક વ્યથા,
મારું નામ અરુણ છે.
અણગમો એવો ભાવ ચોક્કસ.
Okay, right, you can see what's happening here, right? So my speech, this is what speaker diarisation is all about. It's basically the technology behind being able to identify different speakers within a room. It's a really clever signal processing technique. So because of the ways that the audio is coming into the speaker and various other factors as well, it's able to split essentially our speech into 2 parts. So we've got speaker 1, who is me. This is what I said, and notice that this is everything that I said as well. It didn't sort of like overlap anything that this other person was saying. And this is speaker 2, and as you can see, I'm assuming this is what they said. Obviously I can't necessarily understand, so yeah, I'm assuming that this translation is somewhat accurate. And as you add more and more speakers, then this will just keep getting split out essentially, which is really powerful. So then in the speaker diarisation section over here, now you can see that it's split it out and it's telling me that there's actually 2 speakers. And if I wanted to, I can just click on one of those and I can highlight those as well. So that's really cool. Let's end this session, let's clear everything. Notice as well, once again, a really nice feature as part of the Hero UI framework is all of these UI components that you can use really quickly and really easily, such as these toast messages. So anytime something is happening within the application that needs some sort of notification or update to the user, we can use these toast messages, and you can format these in various different ways, but these are really, really nice. I'll come back to this page in a bit when I'm going to show you the mobile user experience, but for now let me show you some of the other pages that I've created too. So we've also got the sessions page. So the transcribe page is clearly mainly focused on just transcribing speech, which is the main core functionality of the web application. If I go over to sessions, this is going to show me all the different recording sessions that I have logged in the application. I can filter these by the number of speakers. I can filter these by date range. So a couple of different filters here I can apply. And then if I want to dive into what that session was, I can click on open. Opens it up in a modal and gives me all the details about this particular session. So it tells me the duration, number of speakers, total number of tokens, the confidence scores. So confidence scores here are basically an indication of how accurately the model was able to translate everything and transcribe everything. So there were some moments where maybe it wasn't so confident, but on average it was really confident, which is great. It tells me the start and end times of the recordings as well, and most importantly shows me the transcription of the 2 speakers. And as we just saw from the transcription page, this is pretty much bang on. This is exactly what we saw before. So that's really nice. The reason why I created this page really was because if somebody is using this application and wants to refer back to a previous conversation, or if someone's using this as a reference to help them learn a particular language, then obviously having a log of everything is going to be really important. I'm sure there's a whole bunch more that we can do here as well, but this is just a starting point. And then finally the settings page. Now there are some sort of like boilerplate settings that I've added in here which aren't really being used. However, as you'd expect on a settings page, this is really just to tell the user about their profile, any sort of membership options that they have, and allow them to change anything if they need to. There's also some things that I've added in here which are thought maybe for later on, so things like a profanity filter, being able to turn on and off the speaker diarisation, even being able to set like a default language, that sort of thing. So those are the pages. A couple of other very quick things. Let me come back to the transcription page. I've also added the ability to change the theme too, which once again is kind of an expectation from most modern user interfaces, but it's sometimes overlooked, and it's a really nice feature to add to your applications. Not only does it make it more comfortable if you are working on a screen in the dark, but it looks cool as well, and it gives a bit more customization for people. Now I went for this sort of like dark brown, sort of like neutral color scheme because kind of linking it back to the whole theme around the sheep and trying to like a color scheme themed around that. Now I'm not necessarily set on this color scheme, but this is what I've kind of landed on to start off with at least. So you can see the other pages within this color scheme as well. Okay, now let me show you the mobile user interface. So if I open this up, let me shrink this down a little bit. So now that I'm on mobile, the navigation bar at the top has now transformed into a toolbar at the bottom, and we've got this mobile fab as well, which replaces the box over here on the left hand side. So now I've got this floating sort of button that I can press to now start the session. So Marunam Arunche, Tarunam Anishche, Marunam Anishche. Okay, so you can see that one went a little bit crazy, to be honest. Another feature that I added in here as well is quite often in Gujarati and in Indian languages in general, I'm assuming, but obviously my experiences with Gujarati is that people will speak in colloquial terms, almost like village dialects. And on top of that, they'll mix in English into what they're saying too. So if you're trying to translate purely Gujarati, sometimes they'll just throw in English words as well. Sometimes that's because they don't have a Gujarati word for it, and other times it's because, you know, the English language is quite entwined within their culture. So notice, when I started the recording, I was still speaking in English. And so that part of what I said, stop the session, actually came through on the English translation. So I added in a feature into the backend where if we're translating from Gujarati to English, but somebody says something in English, then return this in the response. Because obviously, without that English piece within a sentence, you might be missing something which makes the sentence more coherent and makes the sentence make sense. So if somebody is speaking Gujarati or whatever language, but they add in English words, then those words will also come through as well, to try and give some completion to the sentence. Alright, let me try this again. Whoops, I don't want to do this. So if I click on this little like ellipsis button here, there's a few different options. So I can toggle on or off the following functionality. I can clear the session and I can end the session. Okay, right, that's clean now. So let's do it with a couple of different speakers again, so that you can see the diarisation working too. So I'm going to start this, I'm going to play this motivational speech again.
જાગે છે જીવાઈ જાય છે પછી એવું મનમાં થાય છે કે આવું જીવ્યા હોત તો
મારું નામ અરુણ છે.
આવું કંઈક સુધારો કરી શક્યા હોત તો ફરી એકવાર તક મળે તો આવું કરું
મારું નામ અરુણ છે.
જ કરું. એટલે ઉંમરના એક એવા મુકામ પર આપણે છીએ જ્યાંથી હવે પાછા જઈ શકાય એવું છે નહીં, અને પાછળ જે કંઈ જીવાયું છે એની યાદ સતત.
Okay, so hopefully you noticed what happened there. So I started with the motivational speaker and the speech started translating and displaying up here. And then when I started speaking, the screen scrolled down and showed me speaking. And then when the motivational speaker started speaking again, the translation was already in view within the screen, so it didn't need to scroll back up again. But essentially what's happening there with the following functionality is, especially on a mobile device, if you've got 2, 3, 4 speakers, you want the user interface to follow whichever speaker is currently speaking. So then you can keep track of what's actually being said. If it would have just stayed at the top here and not scrolled down, then I'd have to scroll manually to see what that person is saying. And then I basically just have to keep jumping between the two, which gets a little bit confusing. So that's why that feature is quite useful. And then since we're on the mobile user experience at the moment, let's just have a look at some of the other pages as well. So on the sessions page, once again, this is optimized just to look nice for the mobile experience. You can open this up. You can see the transcriptions once again. And then on the settings page, once again, all the same functionality, but just optimized for mobile. So that is pretty much an update on where I'm at with everything to do with the user experience. What I want to show you now a little bit is the backend, so the admin panel, and just to talk through some of these different models as well. So to do this, let's open up the admin panel and let's have a look through some of these models. So we're going to the user model, and the user model itself is quite simple at this moment. Really the only sort of extension on top of the default Django user model is just this membership option here. And I can toggle this if I want to. This will be more useful later down the line when it's actually launched and there's paying customers. But for now, any user that's created just gets put on this founding membership, which basically means that you've got everything unlimited for free. In the languages model, here we can control the different languages that are available for people to select. So you can see here we've got Gujarati, it's an active language, it supports transcription, supports translation from, and supports translation to. So the vision here really is to add as many languages as possible. Payments, this was sort of put in as a bit of a boilerplate for now. This isn't really going to be needed, but later down the line, when this actually gets launched as a real product, then obviously the payment mechanism will become more important. So I'll definitely revisit this later. Apart from that, the transcription is probably the most interesting piece. So these are all the sessions. So as you can see, these are the sessions that I have created this today. So these ones here. It gives us a breakdown in the admin panel about how many tokens were included in the session, the number of speakers, and the duration. So let's click on this and have a little bit more of a look. We've got the original text, this is in the original language. We've got the translated text, so this is in English. And then we've got a summary of the overall conversation here as well. Now this transcription summary comes from the transcription summary table. So once again, if I come in here and I click on the relevant session, we've got the same information here once again. So a session is sort of like the parent model, if you like. You create a session, and then within that session, that's where the transcription tokens are stored. And the transcription tokens are the fine-grained actual text tokens in both the source language and the translated language. And then all of those fine-grained tokens get aggregated together and summarized with a bit of cleaning as well. And that gets rolled up into a summary, which is then here. And that summary then essentially associates itself with a session. So in the tokens part, as you can see here, we have a lot of tokens. I mean, even just from some basic testing, there's over 13,000 tokens. Hence why we're saving this in a separate table, because we're getting tiny little snippets like this and lots of metadata about these snippets. And it wouldn't be a good idea to save that in the sessions table. And then if I switch language to English as an example, yeah, just to show you exactly what's coming through. So there's a lot of information that's coming through. So that is where the real-time translation app is currently. It's looking much better, obviously. I mean, it looked absolutely dreadful before. But it's actually really coming together, and actually it's starting to look like a product, which is great. Not only that, on the back end, we've got some really useful features that will actually enable this to scale and to be used by real users as well. So that wraps up this episode of me getting you up to date and showing you how the user experience currently looks. From this point, you'll be following me along live, and I'll be incrementally improving this application as we go along. And the next steps for me are really to just keep improving this, to get it to a point where it's actually production ready, and I'll be happy to launch this. And then also start deploying this into staging and prod environments on the cloud as well. And the possibilities really are endless. This obviously started out as a project just for me, but as I'm having more discussions with people, as I'm sharing this journey, I'm realizing more applications of how this could be used. As an example, in hospitals, I heard recently that being able to translate between languages in a hospital is really difficult. Not only do they not necessarily have the expertise or the knowledge of different languages, but then they don't necessarily have the technology to hand either. So something like this, where someone could literally just record in real time and translate from lots of different languages into English and back, could be massive. So I hope you enjoyed this and you're enjoying this series. If you are, please leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. And if you're still here at this point, then why not go back and rewatch some of the previous episodes if you haven't seen those already. But for now, I'll see you soon.